If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and just a quick apology. I stopped the audio. We've been having a little bit of an issue here the last few weeks. They've made some changes here at blogtalkradio.com, and the audio has been a little bit distorted, so I stopped it, which just gives us a few more minutes extra tonight to talk about golf. But thank you for joining us this evening, and let me just remind everybody that we are live from 6 to 8 p.m. Central here tonight, and if you're interested in calling into the program at any time during the live broadcast, you're certainly welcome to do so. You can reach us at area code 646-716-4667, or you can email any questions or comments to me personally at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And if you want to follow the show, go to blogtalkradio.com/golftalklive, or just type Golf Talk Live up in the search key, and that will bring you to the main page, and you can listen to us live on Thursday evenings as you are now, or you can go down and scroll into the on-demand section and maybe pick up any of the shows that you might have missed. Got a great show for you tonight, doing something a little bit different again, trying to always get things changed up. I am going to have a Coach's Corner session tonight, but I'm actually going to have one coach plus myself do something a little bit different. A guy that's been on the show many, many times, enjoy having him, PGA Master Professional John Hughes. He'll be joining me here in just a quick second. Just a couple more quick reminders. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Golf Talk Live blog. And also on Twitter, you can follow me at Ted and Buck CEO as well on Twitter. And thank you again on both sites for the recent new followers. Also a little bit later in the show, the second hour after we finish the Coach's Corner, Scott Seifferlein is going to be joining me here. He's the founder of Business Golf Mastermind and five-time published author. He's going to be joining here to pick up the conversation from a couple of weeks ago. We're going to talk about his Business Golfer Mastermind group. He wants to come on and talk a little bit more about that. And this is really something that's going to be geared for the teacher professionals and the coaches out there as well. So you want to make sure that you tune in. But without any further hesitation, let me bring on John Hughes. John, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Ted. Good evening. Hope you're having a good time today.
Always having a good time. John, what was kind of interesting, when I put this together, I was kind of thinking I want to do something different, and you had actually made a suggestion. You put a couple of notes together for some of the conversation tonight. Usually, if I don't have questions for us to field, I'll sort of put together some topics and things like that. And it was kind of actually refreshing, a breath of fresh air, if you will, to have you put some thoughts together. And so we're going to do some questions here and just some general discussion here on Golf Talk Live's Coach's Corner. And I just want to thank you, John, for putting some of the topics together. Let's start off, obviously, with since we are on the cusp of the PGA Championship. Let's talk a little bit about that first to get the conversation going. And I thought I would ask you this question, and then I'm going to give you some thoughts as well on it. And I want to do it a little bit different. We'll talk, obviously, about what's happening through the PGA Championship. Obviously, we're on the first day of it. But I wanted to ask you, if you were coaching one of the players or you were working with one of the players, what are you going to be looking for this week? What are some of the things that you're going to be talking to them about ahead of time and maybe working on ahead of time? And as you observe them throughout the next few days through the tournament, what are you going to be looking for to see from that player that you're working with? And if you have communications with them during the tournament at all, what, if anything, would you say to them?
Well, we've talked about this before in several different sound bites, a couple of different times I've been on. What we're looking to do is, even though it's the last major of the year and it is the major, or it is major, as the PGA says, and it's the last gasp for somebody who maybe trying to make a great season even better, or somebody that's trying to hang on, they need the win. So looking at it that way, that's an up and a down, and you're really trying to level things out. And it's not necessarily just any ordinary week, but keeping it simple, keeping it as routine as possible, keeping it as not necessarily ordinary so much as staying within the patterns that create success for that particular player is really important. They get up too high, they get put too much importance early into the tournament. It's going to be difficult if they get behind to recover from that. It's really easy to lose the tournament the very first day.
Right.
So those first couple of days, the preparation going into that is let's just make sure we have a solid game plan. What kind of decisions are we going to make from certain spots in the fairway and when pins are in certain positions? When we have an opportunity because the wind has calmed down or the greens are a little softer due to some misty rain earlier in the day or what have you, how does that game plan change? Yet we're still trying to play our game versus trying to play against somebody. So when you need to put the pedal down that last 9 holes Sunday and you're in contention, you're more under control of all your faculties, both emotionally, physically, mentally, and the chances of you being able to continue that way and put the pedal down is going to be much greater than if you're grinding things out earlier in the week just to stay up with the field. So I'm looking at what is their energy level, what's their motivation level, like how are they smiling and having a good time, or are they having to grind it out? These are not only verbal cues but nonverbal cues a great coach is going to pick up on. And I think a great coach isn't going to try to change anything so much as be there and support and allow the player to sort of dictate what they need from me. Hey, look at this. I need to change. It's going haywire on me. What am I doing? Or just that little pat on the back, the occasional pat on the back goes a long way.
Yeah, and that's essentially my thoughts as well. And one of the things that I think I would ask, and I sort of just made a few notes here myself in preparation for tonight of things that maybe I would ask, my pro, that if I was working with somebody that's playing in there. And I think obviously the first one I would ask, and you would allude to this as well right from the get-go, is I would want to make sure that they're executing whatever game plan that they've come into the tournament with. If they put together a game plan and a strategy, if you will, of what they want to accomplish. Obviously, they want to win the tournament. That's the optimum. But they're obviously playing with some sort of a strategy or game plan. So I'd want to make sure, first off, that they're sticking to that game plan. And I would also want to see if they've deviated in any way. And that not so much would I ask them this, but this is through my own observations, watching to see their play on course, how they're handling, as you said, different situations. And I want to know if they're executing the shots based on that game plan. In other words, are they taking unnecessary risks along the way that would, again, maybe deviate from what they originally went into the tournament with? And then I'd also be looking now, even though it's only the first round, obviously mental fatigue can creep up on you, especially if you're not playing at your best. And we've seen this even with Tiger Woods on occasion, where you've seen if he's not playing at his best, you can see that he becomes fatigued and just sort of loses that momentum. And you definitely don't want to see that the first round. And then I think probably, as you had indicated as well, I think I would probably want to know what they would need from me as well. And I would want to end on a positive note with some reassurance, with some, something that I know that's going to boost their confidence along the way and get them back on the right track if they've deviated in any way. And even if they haven't, I just want to make sure that individual is going in and finishing that day with some positive comments.
Absolutely, no matter what the day. And you had said something about the mental fatigue. It's difficult sometimes for the average amateur to understand how these guys are so talented in the moment to be able to put the concentration on and take it off when needed. The first time I ever really concentrated on being concentrated, by the 8th hole, I was completely worn out mentally. I was toast. And this is an acquired skill. A lot of people have an 8 thresholds that are higher than others, but it is an acquired skill. It's something that people have to go out and understand what their capabilities are, when to turn it on, when to turn it off, knowing the triggers that do both. And that's what sports psychologists use. It's triggers. It's when do you turn it on? How do you stay in the moment? How do you keep the distractions out of the way? And then have that trigger to turn it off. If you're trying to concentrate for a full 18 holes every step you take, by the third hole, you're going to be driving yourself nuts. It's a difficult thing. And when one of the things that a lot of people have heard is no one puts pressure on you. You put pressure on yourself. That's an artificial way of putting way too much pressure on yourself. And as a coach, I agree with you. I've got to be there to recreate some positives for them when things aren't going their way. But the thing to remember, it's all preparation, because the only person they have out there is their caddy. In the case of Jason Day, his caddy's not only his caddy, is somewhat his adopted father, his coach, his mentor. So someone like that may have a leg up on somebody else, but then again, that washes out because of the emotional tie that's there. So all these guys do things a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, they're trying to make things as routine as they can, try to keep their highs from being not too high, their lows from not being too low.
Yeah, I'd like to, John, I'd like to explore that a little bit. And for those of you that are just tuning into the broadcast now, you're welcome to join in the conversation if you'd like. You can reach us at area code 646-716-4667. Love to have you jump in. We're talking right now about the this weekend's PGA Championship, which of course just officially started today, being the first round. Would love to have you join in the conversation here on Coach's Corner with John Hughes and myself. And again, you can do so at the number area code 646-716-4667. I'd love to have you jump in the conversation. You raised an interesting point about caddies. A lot of great players have had consistent caddies throughout. Phil Mickelson, of course, has worked with his caddy for years. Freddie Couples had his. Of course, he's changed now a few years ago. But once you find that individual, how important is a caddy to the players as a sounding board? And also as somebody that's there to sort of help them through some of the difficult times?
I'll tell you that a great caddy can be the difference between winning a major and losing a major. And at the same time, a great caddy could be someone who really helps propel that marginal player to the potential that the players always have but failed to realize. There's other caddies that just sort of go through the motion. I've been in the golf business almost 30 years in one capacity or another. I've met many caddies, some really good, some are average, some are just absolutely fantastic. When you talk about Joe LaCaiva, who was with Freddie and now with Tiger, Steve Williams, those two come to mind. Although he's a little bit a character of himself, Fluff Cowan, fantastic individual, been around a long time. The wisdom that these guys have and the ability, it's really a timing ability, understanding the player that they're dealing with. Fluff is a great example earlier in the year with Jim Furyk in a rut for wins, hadn't won in a long time. And as you watch him go around Harbor Town, here's Fluff, almost like a football coach pumping the guy up. He knew what buttons to push. So it's not always just carrying the bag, and a lot of people don't understand how hard that is, especially with the modern day courses, with a ton of distance between green and tee. These guys aren't getting rides, but every so often from green to tee, they're walking it, they're humping it. For their ability to concentrate is just incredible. At times, Bones with Phil is another great example of a player-caddy relationship that's just been outstanding. I was fortunate to be at Phil's enshrinement at the World Golf Hall of Fame a couple of years, and Bones was there, and Phil spent quite a bit of time detailing that relationship and what it meant to them and what it means to the overall success of Team Mickelson. Look at the really successful guys that have longevity, and it's the old adage, behind every successful man there's a successful woman. Well, the golfer, there's a successful golfer, there's a very successful caddy there too.
Yeah, and I often wonder sometimes, and again, this is not to detract from the caddies themselves. We know that they're great caddies, but in the case of Joe, which is was Freddie Couples, I wonder if if Tiger's reaping the same benefits from him. I mean, we know his abilities. He's a great golfer himself. as Freddie has mentioned in the past. But sometimes, the personalities are different. Freddie is much different personality from Tiger, and vice versa. And the same thing if Bones was to move on from somebody, if at some point if Phil, moved out into the pasture, so to speak, would Bones be able to just grapple onto somebody else and have really the same effect, because there is such a deep-rooted relationship in both cases? What do you think about that? And again, that's not to take away from the caddy's abilities, but is that a factor as well, do you think?
Well, I'm sure it is. I'll use the example that when you're looking for a new boyfriend or girlfriend, or looking for a new manager in a company, you tend to look for the opposite of what you typically had before. So in the case of Joe versus Steve, there's two diverse personalities there. Steve Williams, very outward, very, very animated, where Joe's very much like Freddie, and that's why they got along so well. You could make the argument that Joe's the perfect caddy for Tiger right now. Is he reaping the benefits of all the different positions Fred was in? Probably, but Tiger was in just as many. But the personality of being able to go back to Joe and lean on Joe, and he's not going to get overly excited about something. He's not going to overly pump me up and keep me a little bit more level-headed. Maybe that's something Tiger felt he needed, which is why he made possibly why he made the change. That's certainly something to look at. I think the ones that work well, when you look at Tiger in his heyday, he was an excitable guy. Steve's an excitable guy. It worked well. Bones, very similar to Phil. Fluff, very similar to not only Jim Furyk, but Peter Jacobsen prior to caddying for Tiger. So, there is some personality to it. There is some, there's definitely a relationship there. And if you can't do something along that lines to get you that way, with a caddy to get you successful, it's I hate to put it as a commodity, but the average caddies are, you can replace them as simply as you can replace a driver. It's nothing personal to any caddy out there, but that's the way these guys look at it. They're out there to win. They're out there to make a paycheck, and every piece of equipment in their team has to function at all 8 cylinders all the time. Yeah,
that's true. Well said, John. What are you looking forward to see? I mean, obviously you want to see some great golf in that, but what are you most looking forward with this championship? What are you looking to see and take away from it?
Well, one of the things, and it was interesting, Charlie Reimer this morning predicted someone would shoot 65, and darn it, Dustin Johnson didn't come within a stroke of that today. One of the things I'm curious about is, can Dustin Johnson show some mental toughness, is the only way I know how to show it, and describe it rather, and overcome many major failures. I'm sure he doesn't look at it like that. The media's probably bashed him all week long, and that's difficult to be able to take that bashing and still keep your game plan intact. And he went out today and did that. He's been doing that all year long. It's been Sunday when he's caved in. I'm looking to see if he can overcome that. Jason Day, if it wasn't for the vertigo at the U.S. Open, would he have won the U.S. Open? Would he have given Jordan Spieth a run for his money? I think he's the guy to beat. Can Jordan win 3 out of the 4 is something to look at. The other interesting thing the PGA Championship always brings about is that surprise winner, whether it's a John Daly, a Sean McKeel, a Rich Beam. They're the annals of winners that win that one and only. And I'm not including some of the bigger stars, the more name brand people like a Davis Love, whose only major is the PGA. But these guys, the proverbial Carl Spackler came out of nowhere and makes a career out of one win. And that's the neat thing about the PGA. The other thing, everybody wants to talk about Tiger. What can he do for 2 rounds and sustain himself through a major? It was really interesting, some comments all the talking heads were providing throughout the week. Most all of them are now agreeing, hey, he's so focused on the improvement, is he over-focused? you just never know. You never know with Tiger. You never know with any particular player. I think the other thing to look for is what this particular golf course does over the course of 4 competitive days. Each and every time they've been at Whistling Straits, if the course has won somehow, some way, not necessarily in score, but in the players' abilities to make great decisions at what seems to be a very benign time, meaning what decision are you making today, Thursday, hitting out of the rough, watching Zach Johnson today make a really smart decision to go back 100 yards or so and keep the point of where his ball last crossed the margin of the hazard between him and the hole versus getting ultra aggressive and dropping somewhere that could have cost him the tournament. Whistling Straits has the ability to either lull you to sleep, but in the windy conditions here, what it does, it doesn't lull you to sleep. It keeps you on edge to the point where you may go over the edge and not know it when it comes to your decision making and that. I think ultimately the person who wins, it's going to be the person. It's a trivial way of saying it. A lot of people say it, but the person, not necessarily the best ball striker or the best putter, but the person who really makes great decisions all 4 rounds is probably going to be there in the hunt, if not winning it Sunday.
Yeah, and I think also too, John, the other thing is it certainly is the person that's going to make good decisions, but I think it's also the person that, even if there has been a few stumbles along the way, are able to recover. And that was something that, you mentioned, about Tiger. Tiger has in the past, certainly was not the best driver on tour, but he was able to recover from whatever shot he had. He was able to be creative enough and forthcoming, if you will, with his aggressiveness earlier on, that he was able to get out of those situations and either, many cases, obviously salvage par, but in many cases come out with the birdie, which in most cases you'd be lucky if you didn't get bogey. So, this is something that you're gonna see, especially in a major championship. And I know we've talked about this before, and you've mentioned that really it's another tournament. But to a lot of these players that are wanting to add to their repertoire or wanting to have, like you said, a good season to finish on even a better season, especially some of the ones like Jordan Spieth and Zach that have got majors under their belt, they're looking to capitalize on this. It's really going to be a matter of how well are they going to be up there. They're all going to be faced with some sort of adversity throughout the week. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. But how are they adapted to recover from that and be able to block out some of the other distractions and not really so much focusing on what everybody else is doing, but staying in that zone themselves?
Agreed, and I think what the amateur can take out of this, we're talking the highest level of skilled players here. Mm-hmm. It applies to the amateur as well. Hopefully there are a lot of amateurs listening, and do call in if you've got questions about this. Would love to answer your questions versus just dillying on about what's going on. But the average amateur, as they watch this particular golf tournament, pay close attention to the banter between the caddy and the player as far as wind conditions, as far as club selection due to wind conditions and pin placement, when they are making a decision because they've hit it in a place that just isn't opportune, how they go about doing that. And what you'll notice is that these guys take their time. They're in no rush, even though they've got to play shots in a certain amount of time and they're expected to play at a pace of play the same as the amateur. The difference is they don't hit as many errant shots. So when they do hit an errant shot, they've collected, I call it the bank of time. You've collected this time as you go through each and every hole, where when you need to expend some time, you've got it there. Unfortunately, the average amateur is you don't have a lot of deposits in that time bank to be able to take that kind of time. So you tend to rush through it. You got someone waiting behind you, just like these guys do. They're not worried about that. They're ultimately concerned about what is their next stroke. And I think if you look at this tournament, Whistling Straits provides a lot of those opportunities for the pros to humble. They'll look just like the average amateur certain times throughout this weekend, and it's a valuable lesson to just sort of sit back, watch it, and realize that you don't have to hurry through to make great decisions.
Yeah, well said. For those of you just tuning in, I'm having a great conversation here with PGA Master Professional John Hughes. He's also the Vice President and Secretary of the North Florida PGA section, and he was also the recipient of the 2013 PGA of America Horton Smith Award. If you want to join in the conversation, we'd love to have you come in. If you've got questions or comments about this tournament this weekend, or if you've got questions that you'd like for us to answer about your game and how we can help you become a better golfer and have more fun, obviously, we'd love to hear from you. You can call in at 646-716-4667, or you can send me a tweet, and I'll be more than happy to read it on air at Ted and Buck CEO. I'd love to have you, or you can go on Facebook, on my Facebook page at Golf Talk Live blog, and submit questions there. We'll keep an eye out on them, and we'd love to have you participate. And John, I know we talked about this. For those that want to jump in and participate, you've got an offer that you'd like to share with them about an assessment.
Absolutely. For those people that do either call in, tweet, Facebook a question, or email a question tonight, we're going to put all those names in a hat and draw a lucky winner to receive a free game evaluation from me here in Orlando. All it requires is, like Ted said, reach him at his Twitter or Facebook handles. I'm monitoring mine as we speak. Mine Twitter is at John Hughes Golf, and Facebook the same thing is John Hughes Golf on Facebook. If you have a question, by all means, send it to us. That's what we're here for. That's what the Coach's Corner was designed for. As much as we like talking, we're here to help you out, and I enjoy that a whole lot more. Ted and I can talk anytime we want, but we can't talk to you but once a week.
That's right. Yeah, guys, don't be shy. We'd love to have you join in the conversation. You're welcome to give your thoughts and input, and you might have some questions or comments that you'd like to make that we would love to have you share with the rest of the audience. But again, that number is 646-716-4667, and my Twitter handle is Ted and Buck CEO, and you can send me a tweet. I'd love to hear from you, and also you can go on to Facebook page, Golf Talk Live blog. Let's move on just a little bit from the PGA Championship, and let's talk about something that the amateurs could certainly benefit from, and that is what is the value of on-course instruction. You know, we obviously have a lot of instruction on the range and on the practice tee, but obviously most instructors or teachers or coaches, what have you, are also doing a lot of on-course instruction as well. Let's talk about some of the benefits of that.
Well, the first benefit, obviously, is most people play more than they practice. There's plenty of times when I've taught people at golf schools, private clientele, and I'm here to tell you some of the better elite athletes I've coached, they'd much rather play than practice. It's a lot more fun to play. So the benefit of being able to help someone on the golf course, for me, I actually get to see what they do under pressure. So many times you hear about, well, I'm a great range player, but I can't take it to the golf course. And a lot of time it's because either you're not practicing correctly and doing some merge and transitional things to take it from the range to the golf course. But I think just as importantly, you're not understanding what you're doing well on the golf course that can help you when you practice and make your practice fun. So there's a tremendous amount of value to on-course instruction. The real key is to understand that it is on-course instruction. I've had conversations with clients before, and, you're going to do a playing lesson, huh? Well, yeah, you're playing, not me. I'm out here to instruct. Oh, but I want you to play. And I'm like, oh, you don't want an on-course instruction day then. What you want is to play with the pro. And there is a difference with that. There absolutely is. The real key, from my side of things, is to help you understand what it is you're doing from a mental side, decision making, to help you with club choices, to help you understand some options you may or may not be thinking about. One of the fallacies of on-course, you can't go out there and fix your swing. That is what the practice facility is about, and that's probably the biggest thing that I see with the amateurs that I have relationships with as a coach. is that, well, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And I'll write it down on a scorecard or a piece of paper or whatever, and I'll say, well, let's finish the hole and we'll talk about it, or let's finish the 9 holes and we'll talk about it, because the worst thing you can do is try to go out there consciously trying to fix something that's just not part of your normal game plan, not part of your normal swing. The other, I can keep going and going and going with the value of it. The other key thing is, I always tell people, you get the best understanding of your short game not in the laboratory of a practice facility, but literally out on the golf course. Ted, I could ask you to stand on your head and putt backwards with your left hand only, and you could probably figure a way to do that at the practice screen.
Sure.
But out on the golf course, when it counts, you're one hand and standing on your head, you're going to have a real difficult time with.
And
because
plus
that's what
you're under the
pressure
clock.
does.
Yeah, and plus you're under the clock as well. I mean, on the practice range, you can, kind of, as they say, dilly-dally around for quite some time, and as you say, find a way to do it. But when you're under the gun and maybe playing in your club championship or something like that, you don't have a lot of time. You're under the clock, and you've got to execute the shot. So you have to be able to have a game plan. That's something that, and you may do things a little bit differently, John, but one of the things that I do with a lot of my corporate clients, if I, take them out on the golf course, I, as you, unless they specifically want a playing lesson, I don't want to be playing. I'm not carrying my clubs and playing along with them. I want them, really, what I try to do before we even go out as part of the lesson, or we may have even done it towards the end of a previous lesson, is I'll have them prepare. We'll maybe just do 3 holes, and I'll have them put together a game plan for those 3 holes, how they're going to attack them and what their strategy is. And I want them to have a clear understanding of each hole, how they intend to play that, so that when they get out there, they're not sort of scrambling and trying to figure out, well, I don't know what to do. And I'm certainly there to help guide them and help move them along in that plan. But I want them to sort of put their thoughts together as to how they want to execute the specific holes that they're playing, so that they're not getting out there and kind of getting befuddled and sort of stressed out because they don't have a vision or a plan that they've put together. So that's what I try to do before we even go out there and play, whether it be 3 or 4 holes. And is that kind of along the lines of what you do as well, or do you something a little different?
I do that. We play, I call it games within a game. There's many a time, say someone's at a golf school for 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Each day is just a completely different idea or theme to have to not only spice things up and keep them on their toes, but focus on whatever it is we're working on. And 3 and 4 hole loops, we get a lot of benefit out of. There's a lot of times I'll see a client for the very first time, and if the golf course is open, I'll take them on a 3 or 4 hole loop and have them play a 3, a 4, and a 5 par. Take the videos, and that's idealistically the best of all worlds to gauge what we need to do, come up with that improvement plan. But for instance, if we're focusing on short game, I bypass the tee boxes. We go to the 150 marker, because I'm a firm believer that short game doesn't start when you're around the green and you have that pitch or chip. Short game starts when you miss a green. So how can you better understand what your trends and tendencies are when you're missing a green? Do you miss short right? Do you miss long left? Do you predominantly have a bunker shot based on the architecture of your home course? Do you have chip shots? Those are the things that we need to know. You need to know as a player to better have an understanding of what your strengths are, so you can play to those strengths. Games within a game. You've had Trent Warner on before. He's got a great book about golf scrimmages. Fantastic book, and I've taken some people out to play scrambles with themselves, and I actually call this worst ball. You sometimes hear it reverse scramble, where you're hitting 2 balls and you're playing the worst of the 2. And when you're up there thinking the first putt for birdie, realizing it doesn't count because you have to do it again, that can really put some mental toughness in you. But at the same time, it shows some people exactly where they do stand on the golf course from a decision-making standpoint of view, from a I don't call it golf course management. I call it self-management. And that is ultimately what we're always trying to do with on-course is to show you how you can manage yourself better with your current skills, that if you did not want to practice, that if you did not want to pick up a club at home and do an exercise, that if all you wanted to do was run to the golf course, get the speeding ticket on the way there, take 5 minutes to warm up and then jump out there. If you take the 5 minutes, how can you better play with your current skills by just finding ways to be a little smarter? That's the value to it.
Yeah, I agree. I want to move on. I want to skip some of the topics here. We're going to come back, but I want to move to one that was kind of interesting, and I'm curious to get your take on this. Obviously, we have when we're giving lessons, some people might have formulated an hour-long lesson, some maybe half an hour, depending on what the circumstances are. But you raised an interesting point. If you only had 5 minutes for a lesson and you wanted instant improvement, what would that one instant tip be based on providing? Obviously, you want a long-term solution, not a Band-Aid. So if you only had 5 minutes, somebody come up and said, "Look, I don't have a lot of time," and you only had 5 minutes to work with somebody, what would your approach be with that?
And this is my approach, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours. Where are you aimed? Where are you aiming that club face, and in turn your body? I do a lot of video lessons for a company that goes around to the different tour events and takes videos of people, and 99% of them, the people are misaligned.
Right.
And it's most likely because they're using their bodies to aim versus the club face. So I would say that's the first thing. And in 5 minutes, I could probably give most everybody another tip, and that is, if you're in the fairway or if you're just off the fairway and you're hitting your approach shot, are you hitting enough club? Are you making the right decision to at least give yourself a chance of that ball getting pinned high or not? I remember coming out of college, reading a Golf Digest article. This was back in 85, 86. And they did a little research. It was 272 people, I remember this, of different skill levels. And they placed people at different lengths to a green, from a fairway, from the first cut of rough, and from rough. And whether you're a complete newbie or a tour player, people miss the green 86% of the time short. That's a huge number. So in 5 minutes, what am I going to do with you? You're darn right, we're going to make sure you're aimed correctly. And number two, we're going to try to get you to check the ego at the door and have you understand your average length shot. And we can do that with 10 shots in 5 minutes with one club, and then be able to prorate that up and down the club set. Hey, my 150 club's 5-iron today. Base it off of that. Don't base it on I hit 9-iron 152 years ago. That's not going to work today.
Yeah, and that really raises an interesting point, because that's something too, that I get faced with when I have some of my clients that maybe I haven't seen for a little while, and they'll go through the numbers and they'll say, well, a couple of years ago, or I was hitting my 9-iron 130 yards or whatever the case may be, and I'll say, but what are you hitting it today? And I want to see, because a lot can change. Your body changes. You might have been a little more physically fit, 2 years ago. A lot can circumstances can change, and a lot of people don't understand that. So they go out and kind of do that assessment one time, and they say, okay, now I know all my yardage is, and they figure that's going to carry them for the rest of their life. Well, when you're 75 years old, I guarantee it, you're not smashing the golf ball 275 yards with your driver. So there's a lot of things that...
If you find a 75-year-old doing that, I want him at my next pro.
But you know what I'm saying? But the point is that this is something that people take for granted. So that brings an interesting perspective as well. How often should we be checking our numbers? How often? Every time we're at the practice tee, should we be doing that each time we're going there, so that we know on that specific day what we're playing with? Or is this something that we can maybe every few months that we should be reassessing ourselves?
It's a hybrid of that. Let's start with the latter, every few months. if you've got a life-altering situation, such as you're working out more, you're trying to work on core stability and development, you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to eat right, you're making a healthy choice off the golf course that's going to affect you on the golf course. And there's an evolutionary process to that. You could be a 7-iron 130 today, 150 tomorrow, and 140 the next day. You just have to sort of figure it out day by day what it is, which leads to the former part. You do want to know what it is on a daily basis. Wind, atmospheric conditions, are you playing at elevation? That will affect how far you hit certain shots, and you've got to be able to take a real quick inventory on the range to understand that. Are you feeling a bit froggy today for whatever reason? Or are you feeling just at the tip top of your game? You're in the middle of just a fantastic roll of life, and you've got a lot of adrenaline in you. That can affect things positively for the most part. Whereas if you're feeling sick, so many times I'll have a lot of people come to golf school, and one thing leads to another, and if the clock caught up with them overnight, and they're there not feeling so good from the night before, and that's going to affect how your distances go. The real kicker I see is how surprised people are when I'm asking them not to give me their total yardage, but to give me their average carry yardage. Because what I have my students, my clients understand is once that ball hits the ground, you've got zero control over it. Only the best skilled players in the world can control the spin ratio of each shot. So what you really need to know is that carry yardage. And if you can understand carry yardage and be able to hit that consistently, that is the mark of a good player, regardless of skill level. You're playing smart, you're playing within yourself, and you're playing to the things that you can control, which makes the game much easier.
Yeah, and that again brings up really a valid point. Is you have to be in control when you're out on the golf course, and I think a lot of times people let the course control them. They let the circumstances, the lay of the land, if you will, controls how they react to things. And a lot of times, the better players go out and they sort of take control. Certainly, they're going to get some unfortunate situations, some unfortunate lies that come along. But the key difference that I see between a lot of amateurs and those that are playing at a much higher skill level is that they go out and they control the situation. They're in control of their game, as opposed to the other way around. The game's not in control of them. And that's something that I think all players. And John, I know, again, I just want to reiterate this offer that you're very generously giving to the listeners here. For those of you that are tuning into the program live, we would like for you to take this opportunity and call into the program. Text us, email us. You can get my Twitter account, Ted and Buck CEO. You can send me a tweet. You can email the program at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com, or you can call into the program if you want. Talk to John and I live here in Golf Talk Live at area code 646-716-4667. And if you do so, we're going to gather those names up and we're going to put them in a hat and have a drawing. And John's going to give you a full game analysis assessment of your game, and down at his location in Orlando. So this is something that you definitely want to take advantage of, and we would love to hear from you. We'd love to have you join in the conversation. So please do so. John, as we continue on, something else that I since we're on the fact of students, you and I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Obviously, the expectations of most of the amateur students out there are not realistic, correct?
Correct. Let me segue that, because you were talking about, controlling things on the golf course. Again, that's why I call it being able to control yourself. It's self-management, not golf course management.
Sure.
I'm going to probably try to find a way to copyright this phrase one way or another, but to me, expectations lead to nothing but one thing, and the word starts with F, and it's not what you think it is. It's failure. Expectations are things that you'll go to the golf course with and have no plan to execute. You just expect it to happen. It's an entitlement almost. And golf is not an entitlement game. You've got to earn every shot. You've got to earn every position on the golf course by planning, controlling your emotions and yourself, understanding what is being presented to you at that time. A lot of times I'll call it problem solving. It's one of the best jigsaw puzzles you'll ever encounter playing golf. And the more you understand how to solve those problems, the less it's speculative. I'll give you a great example. Recently had a student had for an elongated golf school, and the first 2 days went really, really well. And the third day came to the practice facility, and the first words out of the gentleman's mouth is, "Man, I'm expecting this to be a great day." And I asked him, "What do you mean expecting it to be a great day? Can you give me an understanding of what that is in your mind?" And he went on to say how great the previous 2 days were and how much he learned, and that he had a great night. I mean, it was all very surface type answers. So when I probed a little deeper and said, "Well, why were the first 2 days good? What in your mind made them good?" And the only answer he had was, "I hit the ball better." So I immediately felt like, okay, John, you failed if he can't answer exactly why he hit the ball better. And I wasn't doing my job as a coach. So I had to pull that out of him. And before he ever struck the ball the third day, we really had to have like a sit down and say, "Look, let's not go into this with an entitlement idea today. Let's go into it that we're starting fresh. We're starting from scratch." And to help this person out, I went to a completely new subject matter. We had not covered a portion of the short game. So I immediately went to that to sort of set the stage of, hey, this is a process. This is a step-by-step building block process. And if you forget that, if you forget that what brings you to success are these plans, are these goals, are these mile markers that you're putting in your timeline, all you're going to do is go to the golf course with these entitlements thinking, "Oh, it'll happen today." How many, I asked the listeners, how many times have you had a career round on a Saturday, go out Sunday and expect it to happen? Most of the time, 99% of the time, it just doesn't happen because you're going out there just expecting to carry it over from one day to another, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. John, I wanted to also talk about, and this was, again, one of the other topics that you'd thrown in here for tonight's discussion. And I know we've touched a little bit about this before, but, a lot of people are confused about what the differences are between a golf teacher, a golf instructor, and also a golf coach. And the question they may be asking themselves is, why invest time in a golf coaching program? Is it worth your time and resources? And obviously we know the answer to that. It obviously depends on the circumstance, but yes, I would say it's worth it if you truly have a specific agenda in mind. So let's talk about really some of the differences between the three. What constitutes a teacher, what constitutes an instructor, and what constitutes a golf coach.
Sure. In my mind, if you can envision a pyramid, and this is somewhat, it applies to almost every profession out there. At the bottom of that pyramid, say at least halfway up the pyramid, maybe two-thirds up the pyramid, you have teachers. And there's a lot of teachers. And I'm not knocking anybody as I say this so much as just to a visual, realistic way of looking at it. Mm-hmm. There are so many teachers, and what to me defines a teacher is, and I'm a teacher. I started there. It was learning. It was understanding the book knowledge, learning to apply it, doing the things necessary to make sure my clients were getting the best I could provide them at the time. But teachers tend not to have experience. And experience comes in a lot of different ways, whether it's just a marking of time or experience dealing with certain situations or certain skill sets. But at the end of the day, a teacher is going to be there for you just during the time you want them, whether it's a half hour, 45 minutes, whatever the case may be. And it's not necessarily they're moving on to the next person because their schedule's booked. They're just moving on. They got something else to do, and they're not putting an extra responsibility effort into you as a client. An instructor, that's probably the next quarter of the pyramid on top of the teachers. That instructor's probably got some experience, not only in the time that they've been practicing the art, the science of golf instruction, but they've also got some time invested with the different situations they've had to deal with, the different skill levels they've dealt with. They're probably investing a little bit more time in their education and continuing education. And most importantly, they're willing to go the little bit extra mile. They're probably not clock watchers. If you've got an hour lesson and you're still needing a couple more minutes to get things worked out, they're going to stick it out with you. They're going to be there for you. They'll answer the email every so often to make sure you're getting your questions answered. Where a coach fills that top, it fills up that top pointed square of the pyramid. And some of the coaches that I look up to and admire, Mike Krzyzewski, John Wooden, Bill Parcells. There's tons of them in other sports, but there's some great ones in our sport too. A Butch Harmon. When you look at Butch Harmon, he's actually reduced the stable of players that he works with now because he wants to be fully invested in those players. He wants to know them inside and out. He wants to understand them as a person off the golf course. He wants to be there as they're working out with their physios. He wants to work out. He wants to be there having an understanding what the sports psych or the nutritionist is doing. What are the vacation plans and how are the kids doing? The coach goes miles above the minimal to really invest whatever time's necessary to have you not only seek, but achieve your objectives. So where a lot of the instruction industry is going right now, at least with the better coaches, because they're starting to realize that this is valuable to certain people who are willing to commit. A coaching program isn't for everybody.
No.
There are people who need hourly lessons or half-hourly lessons or clinics or whatever the case may be, whether it's due to their time constraints of commitment, their financial constraints of commitment, or anything else that may play a factor in their priority of life. But the people who are really looking to make golf a little better for them, they have the time to commit to practice. They're thinking about nutrition and fitness and sports psych and maybe playing competitive even at their home course. They want to win the flight and the member guest next year or win the club championship. Coaching programs provide you the opportunity to really establish a relationship with someone who cares. You're not looking at a clock. You're not worried about, time's up, hour's gone, next. You just don't have that. You have someone that's there for you thick and thin, and instead of you having to email them, probably they're emailing you, checking up on you, or making a phone call or text to you saying, hey, know you had that hard deal to take care of today. How did it go? And it has zero to do with your golf game. I've always strived to be a coach. I think a lot of people can think back, if they're athletic, and think of the very best coach they've had. They probably learned more about what they were off the field versus what they were on the field with a great coach. And there's value to that. And it's something that, as we go forward, all golfers should at least look at, because there's varying ways you can create a coaching program. There's every coach out there is willing to work with you. We just got to know what your parameters are and what your needs are, so we can set something up that's good for you.
Yeah, and obviously too, some of the differences between the three is, with teaching, it's more technical, like more, focusing on specialties or skills, a skill set perhaps, and obviously instructing, you're going to certainly make changes, but it's more about refining the swing, making it better, fine-tuning, if you will. And then coaching, you're looking for, the player, both the player and the coach is looking for more feedback. And it's really, at that point, less about making changes. You've got some solid changes that have been made. Now it's about carrying it to that next level. And I think a lot of, the better players, again, it's not something for everybody. Somebody that doesn't know how to play golf is not going to necessarily jump into a coaching program and spend that kind of money unless they're prepared to make that lifelong commitment, because it really is, a lifelong commitment. And I don't mean it literally in the sense that, for the next 30 years you're going to be in a coaching program. But, it's something that you have to be willing to put the time and effort in. It's just like we've talked about before, practicing with the purpose. There's no point in going to the driving range or the practice range and just hitting ball and raking the next one over and hitting again and expect to see improvement. It's not going to happen. Even if you hit, 10,000 golf balls, it's not going to happen, because if you're not making the necessary changes to do and execute the shots and execute the proper techniques, all you're doing is you're just repeating those same negative swing patterns. And as you talked about earlier, if the club face is pointing in the wrong direction, you could hit 100,000 golf balls, it's still going to go in the same direction. And that's something that people have to decide what it is that they want from their golf game. Do they want to improve? Are they just looking for that 5-minute tip, as we talked about earlier? Or are they genuinely looking to improve? And that's what we're here to do on Coach's Corner. And, we've got an opportunity here, and you have an opportunity out there that's listening to certainly call into the program, over the weeks and engage with us. We want you to engage. We don't want you, as John talked about earlier, you and I could talk on the phone as we did last night, in preparation, and just talk. We can hear ourselves talk any time. We want you to engage and be involved in the Coach's Corner discussions and ask questions. If you've got questions about your game or you've got questions in general, we'd love to hear from you. So, John, thank you very much for your offer on that, and I think that this is something that we need to build on for future shows as well.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I love coming on. I love being able to help people out. That's just part of my fiber. Did get one tweet while we've been talking, and that was from the executive director of the North Florida PGA, Rich Smith. It doesn't count towards the evaluation, but
right.
He gets his lessons from me every once in a while anyway. But he's making a good point, and I do want to make a shout out to the 20 gentlemen that are playing in
Sure.
the PGA Championship this week as PGA professionals. They earn their way there by playing the Professional National Championship last month. Some excellent players, some undersung and undervalued players. To give a little history lesson, the PGA Tour and the PGA of America were once one and the same, and now they're two separate entities. Obviously, the PGA Tour is a juggernaut, not only of skilled players, but of business. And we still have a great relationship with the Tour's PGA professionals, and the opportunity to be showcased this week every year is fantastic. I've had some friends play well enough to be there in the past, and the experiences they have are just out of this world. It's things they remember for the rest of their life. So if you know of a PGA professional that's playing this week, get behind them, tweet them, support them, pat their back, shout out loud, and let your voices be heard, because it makes a big difference when they're out there, and know that they've got that kind of support. And also want to thank the staff members, and particularly Kerry Haig, our Director of Tournaments and Operations for the PGA, as well as his staff and the other staff of the PGA that make a major like this happen. The behind the scenes to all this is just absolutely incredible. And if you ever get a chance to go see that from behind the scenes as a volunteer in any aspect, whether you're walking the course as a banner holder, as a score banner holder, or you're helping out one of the TV networks as a spotter, or you volunteered to just drive people around. The experience is well worth it. You'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, I remember years, and you're exactly right, John. I remember a number of years ago, when I was a few years younger, obviously, up at the Canadian Open in Glen Abbey, doing just that, volunteering and helping out when I could. And, that was a great experience. Even though I was still, I was teaching in that at the time, but I had an invite to come and do that through the facility I was working with at the time, and it was a great experience, and I enjoyed it, because you get to see not only some great golf along the way, but you get to really get caught up with the fans and just enjoyment of the whole process. And if you've never been to a professional tournament, like a PGA event or LPGA for that matter, it's definitely worth going to and getting behind some of these great players, and what a great testament to many of the great men in the PGA. for
men and
all
women.
the hard work.
Men and women.
And men, yeah, I know. I caught myself there just as I was saying it. Men and women in the PGA for doing all the hard work that they do. So thank you very much for all of the great work that you guys do. And for those of you that want to find out more about John, go to johnhughesgolf.com and definitely go and check him out. He's got a lot of great information. I know many of you have been to his site before, but I strongly urge you as I say goodbye to him for tonight. But he will be back many, many more times on the program. We're going to have some other things that John and I are going to put together and bring here. And we just wanted to have a great discussion tonight, and we hope that we could get you more engaged. But we'll have to keep working at it, John. We'll get them engaged here over the next few weeks.
I have no doubt we will, and some of the things I'm going to be bringing forward is I'm doing some research, as I've said in the past, with Flight Scope and Golf Pride on the exact reasons why grips work the way they do and how to better effectively put yourself in the right grip. And some of that information we're now starting to cultivate and cull and look at heavily and try to see some trends, and should be having some information about that soon, along with some other projects I'm working on. It should be a lot of good information coming forward. And as Ted said, johnhughesgolf.com or at John Hughes Golf on Twitter. I'm more than happy to help somebody out if you got a question or just want to continue the conversation offline. And once again, Ted, thanks for the honor and privilege, and look forward to more opportunities to do the same in the future.
Well, I appreciate it, John. I always look forward to having you on. You're one of the many great professionals out there and hardworking. So take a break tonight, go and relax and enjoy some of the highlights from today's event, and then, of course, enjoy the rest of the tournament throughout the weekend. Have a great weekend, John. What's that?
Thanks, Ted. And I was going to say, let me give a quick plug. I'm actually not going to take the break. I'm going to listen to Scott Seifferlein. He's a friend of mine, and some of the things he's got to say, some people look at him sort of quizzically, but I'm firsthand proof that some of the things he's going to present tonight and presented last week do work. And if you're a golf professional out there in need of help, it's probably a good hour spent the next hour with you and Scott.
Exactly. Thank you, John, and I'm sure Scott would be more than happy to thank you as well. So on his behalf, I will. And I know he'll thank you himself later. But thanks, John. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
You do the same, Ted. Thanks.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, that was my special guest on the special edition of Coach's Corner, John Hughes, PGA Master Professional down in the South Florida area, in the Orlando area. Make sure you go to johnhughesgolf.com and check out his site and at John Hughes, also on Twitter. My next guest, of course, as John just alluded to, is the owner of GrandRapidsGolfLesson.com at the Watermark Properties, and he's also the founder of Business Golf Mastermind Group, which we're going to talk about more tonight. And he's a 5-time published author and also a noted golf instructor in Donald Trump's book, Trump, the Best Golf Advice I Ever Received. Be sure that you've got a pen and paper handy, and we're going to get some good information here that you don't want to miss. So without any further hesitation, let me bring on my special guest tonight, Scott Seifferlein. Good evening, Scott. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you, Ted. Appreciate having me on tonight, and looking forward to the conversation.
Not a problem. And welcome back, should I say. You were just on here a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about that, and we're obviously going to continue the conversation. And as John had alluded to, I don't know if you heard him or not, but we're going to talk, and this is something that the coaches and teaching professionals out there really need to pay special attention to. So let's get right into it and just talk a little bit about just sort of an overview of what specifically we're going to talk about tonight.
Well, we're actually going to change course tonight and talk more on the golf lesson marketing side for the golf instructors that are listening to the show tonight and maybe listening to the recording in the future. And we're going to talk about how things are getting more and more sophisticated. The golf instructors are getting more and more sophisticated, just like your previous guest, John Hughes, and many of the other instructors out there that are continuing to get more and more sophisticated with their business skills and their business development. And we'll be sharing some strategies for those that are already on that process to continue on that process and make it even more efficient and more profitable. And then for those that are just new to getting involved with marketing their golf instruction business, perhaps they were employed at a facility for a long time. Now they're just starting to go out on their own. And what do, right? They probably don't have an idea because they've always been given that business in the past, and now all of a sudden they have to generate business out of thin air. And so those are some of the things that we'll be sharing tonight.
Yeah, let's start it off since you had already mentioned about in the independent golf instructors. There's a lot of them out there, of course. And you recently just actually published an open letter that you'd sent out to many of the golf course operators promoting, obviously, the value of contracting a golf instructor. What are some of the trends that you're starting to see in business of golf instruction?
I am seeing golf instructors become very business savvy and much more valuable to the facilities where they teach than they have in the past. And there's proof of that in the Facebook group, Business of Golf Instruction. There's many great conversations out there that are happening about how to grow your business. And so there's a lot of value in that group. And in that letter that I published to golf course operators and owners, I laid it out there that, listen, where else can you find such a valuable resource to grow participation at your facility than with a golf instructor? Not only that does the golf instructor bring business to the facility, but the facility oftentimes does not pay the instructor benefits. There's no payroll taxes. There's little to no risk having an independent golf instructor at a facility, and that independent golf instructor drives traffic from outside of the facility into the facility and enhances the facility's reputation. So I find a lot of value in having an independent golf instructor at a facility.
Yeah, and it's really in a sense it's like having a great salesperson there, as you said, driving traffic into your facility, and again, because they're not outlaying things like benefits and insurance and things like that for the specific individual, there's really it's all benefit and really no downside for some of the courses and some of the operators out there. Let me ask you, or before we go on to get in more into the discussion, I just want to remind everybody that we are live. So if you want to call in and if you've got specific questions for Scott that you want to talk about some of the discussion that we're going to be having here in just a moment, I invite you to do so. I think it's well worth the information. It's great to see all this, as you pointed out, Scott, online and some of the different golf groups and that, especially the Business of Golf Instruction on Facebook. But nothing beats a great live conversation. So let's get some conversation going hopefully tonight. And you can do so by calling into the program at area code 646-716-4667. We'd love to have you join in on the conversation. Scott, let me just ask you, we talked about this here a little bit. Why don't you explain for those that maybe are just tuning in for the first time, what is a mastermind group and how does a golf instructor benefit from participating in one?
Sure, and just real briefly, just
Sure.
Back up for 1 second back to that
Sure.
open letter to golf course operators. You can find that on if you search WordPress blog. It's titled 2015 an open letter to golf course owners and operators, and in that the instructors will find a valuable list of the benefits of having a golf instructor at your facility, and maybe some of those benefits they haven't thought of or haven't leveraged with their facility owner. Or if they're pursuing a facility, they haven't leveraged that in their pursuit of that facility. So I think that they'll find some benefit in that. But going on to mastermind group, that's probably a new term in the golf industry. I personally had never came across that word before in the golf industry, and I discovered it outside of the industry, and I discovered it through business consultants that I had hired. But I think the best definition of a mastermind group goes back to Napoleon Hill. And Napoleon Hill was a famous author and speaker and personal development trainer back in the late 1920s, 1930s. And his concept of the Mastermind Alliance was formally introduced in his book, Think and Grow Rich. And that book is one of the top 10 all-time leading books. So it's it's probably a book that most of your audience has heard of, and
yep.
But the mastermind groups have really been around since the beginning of time. Even if you look back at the Bible, mastermind group, the 12 Disciples. And even Benjamin Franklin belonged to such a group. And Napoleon Hill wrote about that mastermind group principle as, and this is just to quote Napoleon Hill, is the coordination of knowledge and effort of two or more people who work toward a definite purpose in the spirit of harmony. And he continues on by saying, no two minds ever come together without thereby creating a third invisible, intangible force, which may be likened to a third mind, the mastermind. And that's the true definition of a mastermind group.
Now, you organize, you have a mastermind group that obviously is a private group of golf instructors, and that obviously are engaged and they want to grow continue to grow their businesses. What insight, if any, can you give us on what goes on in these groups?
Oh, that's a good question, Ted. Thank you. And one other thing on a mastermind group, it's not, I wouldn't consider it group coaching, because in a mastermind group, everyone's participating. So the knowledge goes around, and we have what are called profit seats, where each participating member has an opportunity to share a particular challenge or maybe even an opportunity that they have, and they want to take advantage of that opportunity the most efficiently way possible. And so we have these profit seats where they present that opportunity over a period of 60 seconds to 120 seconds, and then the group shares ideas on that. So it's just not me coaching the whole group on what to do, but it's the group coaching the group essentially, and each person has an opportunity to have that profit seat on each of our monthly calls. So we have a monthly call, and at the beginning of that monthly call, we have a keynote presentation on a certain topic that's very much related to growing your business as an independent golf instructor. And sometimes I will keynote that topic, and other times I bring in very special guest presenters, oftentimes, in fact, presenters that charge $10,000 or more for a speaking engagement, and I've been able to obtain these presenters to present to my golf instructor mastermind group. Just to give you a little bit of an idea on some of the topics that we cover mindset. Many golf instructors, and myself included, came from a background of education where we went to college, we got educated on how to teach golf, and we were trained more or less to be order takers, where we didn't know how to sell, and we didn't know how to acquire a lead, we didn't know how to cultivate that lead and turn it into a prospect, but we did know how to take orders. So we were very good at standing around a golf shop, answering the phone, taking orders. And if somebody did ask for a golf lesson, then we would do a darn good job giving that golf lesson. Yeah. So one of the topics we cover in the mastermind group is the mindset shift of once you're an independent golf instructor and you don't have that golf course feeding you business constantly, you have to develop that business out of thin air. You have to get into the mindset of what business you are actually in. And the top golf instructors, and especially the ones that are most well-known, they won't tell you this, but they're not actually in the business of golf instruction. Sure, that's what they do. They provide that service. That's what they do. But what business they are really in is the marketing of golf instruction. That's the actual business that they are in. So we work on shifting that mindset, including topics like why you're in business, understanding direct response marketing versus expensive branding marketing, and the advantages of both, and the strategies to implement as an independent golf instructor who doesn't have a multi-million-dollar budget. We talk about unique selling positions and how to better leverage not just tools in the golf industry, but leveraging good marketing tools outside of the golf industry. So that's a big part of how we kick off the mastermind group and change the mindset. Once we have the mindset changed, then we go into more strategic topics, such as how to understand demographics and the psychographics. There's a big word, psychographics, what's going on in your client's head. And that's very powerful once you start to think like your prospects rather than think like a golf instructor. There's
Right.
very powerful profit strategies involved there. So we go into that. We cover outsourcing and time management. We cover pricing strategies. In fact, pretty much everyone in our current mastermind group has raised their prices, successfully raised them, and increased their business at the same time. So we're really excited about that. We cover sales strategies, how to take a lead and turn it into a prospect, and turn that prospect into a sale. We cover celebrity strategies. And I say celebrity because that's related to PR, public relations, and gaining celebrity status in your niche market by being interviewed on television, interviewed on the radio, writing articles for magazines and newsletters. So those are just a few of the many topics that we cover on a year-to-year basis.
And you really bring up some interesting points. First off, just going back a little bit, you talked about really the golf instructor really having to sort of engaging, if you will, in their efforts. And one of the things that you had mentioned about being an order taker, I still see this, and I'm sure you do as well in the industry, where you see, unfortunately, a lot of some great instructors that are doing just that. They're taking orders. They're walking around the pro shop waiting for business to come to them. And in this difficult economic climate that we've been facing here over the last really decade, that's not going to be good for business. And I think this is also the reason why we've seen so many courses struggle, because they're not, the courses themselves, not just the golf instructor, but the courses themselves are really not effectively going after the market. They're just sort of waiting, opening the doors and waiting for, waiting for the people to sort of rush in, and it's just not happening. People are finding other things to do. So we have to be proactive in our efforts, and this is really what this purpose of this mastermind group is for us to be more proactive in getting these, individuals not only interested in golf, but engaging with our businesses.
Yes, and not to just pick on the golf industry. You see that in every industry.
Sure.
I mean, there's accountants that are order takers. There's attorneys that are order takers. You see that in every professional field. I obviously the golf industry this is a whole other topic and debate, but obviously the golf industry was overbuilt in the 2000s, and now we just have a little period of change in this new economy. So it's highlighted more in the golf industry than it is in some of these other industries, because there are some particular challenges that are niched to the golf industry.
Yeah, and it's exciting, and I'm glad that you raised this other point as well about the people in your group that have been able to increase their prices successfully and being able to reap the benefits of that. One of the things that really has disturbed me, as I'm sure both yourself and many in your group, that has disturbed me over the last little while, is this sort of slashing and burning of prices in the golf industry, not just with instruction, but with tee times and that as well. And it's actually been, in my opinion, to the detriment of the golf industry, because what it's done now is it's actually sort of cheapened the product, if you will, and service in the case of the instructors. And I'm sure this is something that you guys are very excited about, to be able to turn that around.
Yes, very excited. And positioning golf instruction is not just a commodity,
right?
But it's a
right, exactly. Exactly. What people don't understand is, it's not just a matter of him or her standing up there and giving the instruction. There's a lot of preparation that goes in. It's not everybody is going to be a golf instructor. There's a lot of information that has to be taken in, a lot of research that has to be done, a lot of education that has to happen in order to be an effective instructor. So people don't understand. It's the same thing as, you're not going to take your car to be fixed to somebody other than a mechanic that doesn't have the necessary skills and training to do so. So, people have to understand that those people have to earn a living and have to make a reasonable have an expectation of a reasonable profit. And I think what's happened is there's been a panic in some cases where, there's been a dip in instruction, and there's been a dip in rounds played. And I guess it's just natural that we want to discount everything. And I think what's happened is it's sort of gone on steroids, and it's created a problem, in my opinion, with the industry. So it's good that the industry is starting to recognize that and taking steps. And I think this group that you've got and are developing and continuing to grow is a fantastic idea.
Yes, and we've had many of our instructors in our group at one point or another, in some cases still currently, have used some programs where they offer savings.
Sure.
So similar to a Groupon, but we train them on a strategy that I used back in 2011. We train them on a strategy to use it as a lead generator with the sole purpose of actually getting off of it. And we've gotten pretty much all of our golf instructors in our group off of those processes and at the same time raise their prices. But we use them in short spurts with very strategic methods so that it actually works rather than just discounting your services and then not having any business to show for it after that period of discounting.
Yeah, and that's a great way to do it. This was something that I learned back in, my background, of course, was sales and marketing, and sales particularly. One thing that I was always taught is, and there's nothing wrong with everybody wants to get a good deal, and there's certainly nothing wrong with some discounts, but you have to be careful that you don't get too loose with the discounts, because what ultimately ends up happening is you end up not making profit, and you end up getting a reputation for constantly giving discounts in order to get business, and people pick up on that. It's like if you know somebody's giving away the farm, why do you want to go over to this farm over here when you can just wait, because at some point this one over here is going to do something that's going to be a little bit more effective, and again, it works to the detriment of the individuals. I'm seeing through the notes here, and I'm curious to ask you this other question here is, what is OPN?
OPN is Other People's Network, and it could also be OPC, Other People's Clients. And as independent golf instructors, one, we don't have a lot of time because our time is very valuable. We don't have a scalable business without other people working for us. So every time, in order for us to make money, we have to be in front of a client. And if we're in front of a client, we don't have time to be marketing our business to find new clients. But, however, by using OPN or OPC, we can leverage our time by having other people driving traffic to us. So that might seem a little bit unrealistic, but let me explain. So OPN and OPC could be getting free publicity on media. It could be hosting events, which, by the way, I'll share with you a stealth strategy here in a moment on how hosting those events doesn't mean you will sign up people for those events. You'll actually have somebody else do that for you. And they'll pay you for them to do it for you. And it could be speaking at a golf expo. It could be leveraging the golf course network. It could be doing a charity event. So it's basically any time you get to speak in front of a group that you did not have to create. Someone else created that network and allowed you, and sometimes even pays you to be in front of the group that they did all the work to put together.
Right.
So that's OPN or OPC.
Fantastic. And obviously, the benefits for business professionals, and that's really, and I understand the direction that you're going in. Really, it's not just about golf instruction. We are independent business owners, if you will, or independent business men and women, and really, we have to think of ourselves. One thing, and this is why I alluded to sales. I think this is something that I'm sure you're seeing it more now, but this was something that really wasn't in earlier teaching of golf instructors, was that a lot of them weren't really good salesmen, and this is something that I think would be certainly beneficial, is how to become and how to sort of cultivate that skill, because that is a skill in itself. I mean, it's great to know all about the different shots that can be made and the different strategies on becoming a better golfer. But as an instructor, you need to be able to sell yourself, and just standing in front of or in a pro shop or out on the range or out on the course is not always going to do it. So you have to be able to market and sell yourself. And this is really what the industry is starting to get more aggressive. And this is why you're seeing so much interaction on social media as well. It's a great networking tool to get your information out there.
Absolutely. Very powerful.
Right. Yeah. And
let's for example, let's say that we want to have an event hosted, right? We want to host an event, but we don't, as an independent golf instructor, we don't have the cash to go out and advertise the event. We don't have the time to go out and find people. We might have to sort through 500 people to find 10 people to attend our event, and we don't have time to do that. So here's an example of OPN. I'm currently connecting with financial advisors. Financial advisors are a good target market because they like to entertain their clients. And so they may take their clients to a sporting event and get a suite at a sporting event. They may take them deep sea fishing, as an example. Or they may take them to the golf course. Well, in the past, golf professionals didn't reach out to financial advisors, so they maybe just went out and played golf with their clients. And I found this niche where I'm able to provide that financial advisor with a concept that they haven't come across before, where we give them a 45 to 60-minute event, and that event could be how to hit out of the sand. It could be a green reading strategy. Aim point instructors would be very good at this. It could be a how to hit it soft around the green. So their clients, they all chip the ball, and it's like a super ball. It hits the green and bounces way across, and then they're playing tennis back and forth across the green with their chipping. And I simply give them a 45-minute session on how to hit it soft around the green. Their clients are amazed at how easy it is to get the ball to land soft around the green, and everybody's happy. Now, what just happened there? I didn't have to advertise to get those people in front of me. In fact, I actually charge for it. The financial advisors actually pay me to put these events on for their clients, and at the same time, they're bringing me, I do small, intimate events, so it's not big numbers, but they're bringing me up to 10 of their clients every single time. So now I can do 10 of these a year. Let's say, for example, we do 10 of those a year. I get paid for all 10 of them. I get in front of 100 prospects who can be prospects for my individual coaching, and I didn't have to pay for any of those prospects. So that's a much more efficient way than going out and spending money on advertising to get in front of those same 100 prospects. So that's a good example of that. But in order for that to work, here are some key strategies in order for something like that to work. Number one, you have to put together interesting topics. And you also have to be an advocate and a resource to the financial advisor, because oftentimes, it doesn't necessarily have to be a financial advisor. I should back up for a second. I've done these for realtors, commercial and residential. I've done them for insurance professionals, for attorneys, and CPAs. So there's a variety, even nonprofits. So there's a variety of different target markets that benefit from this by entertaining some clients and having you entertain those clients for them. So I am a bit of an advocate in that I help them design the event. I help them understand how to send out invites. I even have an invite template now that I've developed that they can use to, and it's what do I want to say? It's a compliance. I'm not in that industry, but I guess in many of those industries that everything has to be approved by compliance. And so this template is approved by compliance. And then after that happens, and you have the event, and you provide this interesting topic to them, like something like how to gain an extra 20 yards without changing your swing, something that's attractive to their clients. You also encourage them to have their clients invite prospects. So the advisor, the insurance professional, the attorney, not only is he entertaining his clients, but he's also doing business development, or she is also doing business development at the same time. So everybody's got business development going on. The clients and prospects are entertained, and everybody benefits, everybody wins. On the back end of that, and this is important, and then I'll let you go for a bit, but I just want to finish this up here really quick. On the back end of that, the golf instructor needs to have a lead generation system in place and a follow-up system in place and a sales system in place so that these advisor clients and prospects that come out don't just do nothing. There needs to be an opportunity for them without a hard sell, without a greasy car salesman sell. There has to be an opportunity at the end of the event for those that are interested in staying in touch with the golf instructor not for the golf instructor to hand out business cards, not at all, but for the golf instructor to actually collect the data of those who are interested and then follow up with a lead generation campaign and sales strategies that build a relationship with those prospects and eventually create some sales.
Yeah, and when I was in sales before, this was things that we used to do in outside of the golf industry. And again, it's something that's applied really in most businesses, and it's really something that is very advantageous for the golfers. I mean, it's a fantastic idea, and I'm sure there are some of the instructors out there that have been doing this, but there's a lot of them that aren't. And I think that this is something, and I like the idea of what you're doing here, Scott, because there are a lot of instructors out there that really are unsure of what direction to go into. They've been struggling here, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second, but a lot of them have been struggling here in more recent times, and they're maybe between them and the facility, they're pumping more dollars into advertising to get people to come out to the facility, but it's not maybe necessarily the smartest avenue. And what you're proposing here really, again, the prospective client that you're inviting is bringing his or her clients in, and it's really more often not at their cost and their expense. So you're really not losing anything, and you have so much more to gain.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's how it's sold to the business professionals who would do an event like this with me and pay me to do this event. That's how I show them the value of that. In fact, the participants, the advisors that are participating in this, when they hold an event, they are averaging one new client per event that I do with them because of how we're structuring it with inviting the prospects. So it's been very successful, and a new client to a financial advisor is worth a lot of money. You bring on a new $1 million client, if you're a fee-based advisor, they're getting 1% of that less fees that they pay back to, and some of them pay bigger fees, some of them pay smaller fees, depending on whether they're an independent or they're with like a Merrill Lynch. But they get a pretty big percentage of that, and that's $10,000 a year just for that one new client. So they host one event, they gain one new client, $10,000 a year. That client stays with them for 8-10 years. By having that one event, they just made $80,000 to $100,000. So there's huge value in it for these business professionals hosting these client and prospect events.
Well, and the other thing too, what it also does, Scott, and I'm just sort of thinking ahead here, the other option that you have is, let's say, again, keeping it simple, let's say you brought in a financial advisor into the fold, if you will, and they've invited 10 of their clients. Well, some of their clients might be obviously in other industries that may also benefit from this. So you're not only potentially maybe getting some instruction money out of this, but you may also get somebody, like you said, maybe a real estate agent, maybe an insurance agent, and or a CPA that's in his group that says, hey, I might want to do this with some of my clients. So now you've potentially got a rollover effect of not only maybe getting some lessons out of it, but you've also got a situation where they may want to have you do the same thing with their clients. Again, bringing, 10 more or 15 or whatever your limit is of potential prospects.
Exactly, and that's not theory. That's actual case study results that have actually happened. The one event I did for a residential realtor back in June, there was an attendee of that event who does consulting in the manufacturing industry, and he has signed his staff person up. He's in the process of signing that staff person up for one of my other programs where they get individual coaching, some business consulting on the side, and they get one client event hosted for them. So it's a whole package of individual lessons, individual golf lessons, some business consulting on the side, and a client event. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Scott, as I mentioned, I wanted to talk about some of those that are out there struggling. So if there's some golf instructors or teachers out there that are listening to the program, either now live with us or are maybe going to tune in a little bit later, if they're thinking about getting into and finding ways of being more creative with their business development, if they're thinking about making that leap and becoming an independent golf instructor, what are some of the first steps that they should be taking?
Okay, wow, good question. And your previous guest, John Hughes, he knows my trials and tribulations firsthand. As John and I were a bit of a mastermind group back when I first became an independent golf instructor, and I made the leap. I thought that honestly, I thought I was a good golf instructor. I had never been at a facility where I had to develop business, so the business always came to me. Everyone said I did a great job. They gave me referrals and all that.
Sure.
So I thought I knew what I was doing, right? So I was ready to make the big leap. And so I moved to a new city where I had zero contacts. I had zero business experience. And I basically had next to zero funds I couldn't go out and invest $100,000. I had no bank loan or anything like that. So I had to start from scratch, and I had to invest $500, and then I had to make more than $500 to keep going. And that was every single week. I just had to make that happen. So if I was to advise someone who was thinking about becoming an independent golf instructor, I would probably advise them against going the route that I went in the manner that I went. Although it did have its benefits, it forced me to become one of the top golf lesson marketers and golf instruction business marketers in the whole business. So that had its advantages, and I continue to reap the residual effect of that advantage. However, it was very difficult, and if I would have done it all over again, moving to a new city, I probably would have worked at, and my wife probably would have demanded that I work at, after she experienced the whole thing too, that I worked at a facility first and developed a database before I went off and became an independent instructor. So now, that being said, research the captive audience. That is very important. Captive audience is very important. So we've talked some strategies. If you don't have a captive audience, here's how you can leverage other people's network. But if you can, it's very valuable to go to a place where you have a captive audience. I was just talking to a golf instructor out west, on the West Coast last week, and the conversation was challenging. That golf instructor has some challenges because the golf course does not provide a captive audience. The golf course actually competes against this particular golf instructor. And so there's a lot of challenges to overcome where that instructor has to drive 100% of the business development without having a captive audience. So if you can research the captive audience and find a place that has a good captive audience that you are allowed to market to, where the facility supports you being there, that is a huge, huge advantage. That was the big problem that I had when I started, that I was at a facility that did not have a good audience when I first started out, and it was very challenging. I spent a majority of my time off-site from that facility developing leads out of thin air, and gained a lot of skill sets by doing that, but it was a lot of 16-hour days, a lot of ramen noodles, because that's all I could afford, and it was tough. It was definitely tough. So having a good audience is very important. That being said, you don't want to 100% rely on a good audience without developing some marketing skills so that you can provide value to the facility that you're at, and you can show them that you're not just sitting there and depending on them and living high on the hog and getting everything from them. You want to show that you're providing value to the facility by being there. So absolutely put in and get out there and do some marketing training, whether they follow my blog, the USA Golf Marketing blog, or they join a mastermind group, or I work with them on an individual basis. They've got to take steps to develop good marketing strategies.
Yeah, and Scott, let me ask you on that note. Obviously, in some of your bigger markets, you have a greater pool to draw from. But what about some of the smaller markets out there? There's obviously golf instructors out in the smaller markets that maybe don't have. I mean, obviously you have some of the potential that we talked about here tonight, but there are some areas in the country that maybe are working with a smaller market. What can they do to maximize what's available to them. And what I mean by smaller market is maybe the population isn't as big. Maybe it's more non-professionals in their market, maybe more blue-collar workers and things like that. And that's not to detract from anybody, but there's obviously different circumstances. John has an ideal situation in Orlando. It's a very high golf market and also a lot of business professionals, but there may be other areas outside that don't have the same resources that maybe John has available to them. What can they do to maximize using the methods you're talking about?
Well, the huge advantage of being in a smaller market is you don't have as much competition. Being in Orlando, you have a tremendous amount of competition. So if you've got a million population and you've got 10 golf instructors, you've got 100,000 that you can draw from, basically, because you're splitting that million up with the other golf instructors. Unless you're more sophisticated than them with your marketing, and you can put some of them out of business, and then you can draw from a bigger crowd. But if you have a city of 100,000, it's pretty good odds that you're likely the only golf instructor that's full-time anyways. You may have some competition that are assistant pros and head pros that teach part-time. You're always going to have some of that. But for the most part, if you're in one of those smaller communities, you're likely to be the only full-time golf instructor. So that means you are the expert authority. You can be the celebrity authority. Even those smaller markets oftentimes have a local community magazine, local community newspaper, local community online places where the news happens, and you can be the featured golf instructor because you're it. There's nobody else to compete with. So from a percentage standpoint, you will have blue-collar people, but you have blue-collar people in big cities. From a percentage standpoint, you have a smaller group to draw from, but you have less competition. So essentially, you have the same ability to draw that you would in a bigger community. You have professionals in every community. You don't have as many in the smaller communities, but percentage-wise, they will still be there. So I would never want that to be an excuse by being in a small community. I am very confident that any golf instructor could go to any community and have a successful golf business.
What about networking through groups like, and I pretty much know the answer that you're going to give for this, but I want to throw this out there for those that maybe not be. Obviously, most areas have a chamber of commerce and things like that, and it's great to be involved with that, but it's not just a matter of showing up at their weekly or bi-weekly meetings and just sort of sitting there like a bump in a log. There's a good opportunity with some of these organizations like a chamber of commerce or business networking groups to tap into what we're talking about here, correct?
Absolutely, and there's zero competition there because you would be the only golf instructor that does anything like that. It hasn't historically been done. So that's a huge opportunity. And in fact, the topic that we have in this month's USA Golf Marketing Golf Instructor Mastermind Group actually happens to be that topic. We're covering strategies on how to go to a networking event. One big strategy is do not pass out your business cards. The business cards, if you pass them out, they end up on the floor, they end up in the circular bin. Maybe somebody finds it in their car 2 weeks later because they just had a chicken sandwich and they're on their way into a meeting and they realize they have chicken in their teeth and they use your business card to clean their teeth. And that's how it works. So that's not a good lead generation strategy. I was talking to another golf instructor recently, and the challenge was that they had been walking the range, right? So that's a good strategy. That's cool. There's a captive audience there. You're walking the range trying to develop business. And so I asked, well, how many people are in your database? Well, there wasn't very many. And they'd been walking the range for a long time, but they'd just been passing out business cards. And that's the wrong way to network. Whether you're at a chamber function or whether you're on your range, do not pass out business cards. In fact, so that I do not pass out business cards, I forced myself to not have business cards. And that way I became a lead generator, a collector of other people's business cards who were good prospects. And that's how to network at a chamber event, at BNI events, Toastmasters, things like that. You become a resource first by finding out what they're looking to accomplish, and that your audience wants to write that down. Find out what they want to accomplish. start to engage in what their business is about, who their target market is, who they would like to meet, and then become a resource and try to help them. Try to help them solve their challenges first. Ask for their business card. And then as a result of that, the law of reciprocity turns around and they will then ask you about your business. And as long as you have something compelling to share with them, not that you're just a golf instructor and I just give golf lessons at so and such a place. But if you have a compelling answer to what you actually do and engage them, they're oftentimes, if they're a good prospect, they will say, well, wow, that's interesting. Send me some info. And now you have their business card. They may or may not ask for yours, but who cares? You have theirs, so now you have permission to follow up if they ask. So oftentimes I put those people on my what's called a drip feeder system, and that's my email software that sends out content and sends out valuable golf tips to my list. And over time, some of those people sign up right away. Others I've had sign up after they've received their 568th email. And but imagine that. They've been on that list for that long, and they haven't unsubscribed. Pretty incredible.
That is incredible.
Sometimes it takes that long, and that's how you can be more efficient with your networking.
What about? I touched on a little bit ago, but I want to bring this back because I think it's important because I know that there's going to be some listening out there tonight that maybe fall into this category. And this is not really meant to be a criticism to some of the instructors out there, but there are an awful lot that are not proactive. And you can talk to your blue in the face and try to show them the benefits in that, but how do you sort of crack that walnut, if you will? Obviously, I'm sure for the most part you probably had very positive response and should, but I'm sure there's some out there that just maybe it's a fear. They're just not engaging type personalities. Maybe they're just not. They sort of need a little bit of a push. How do you sort of ignite that? What do you do what do you sort of open the dialogue with and say, okay, here's why you need to be doing this?
That's a good question because I personally am not an outgoing person, believe it or not. I would prefer I almost prefer to be an order taker, although I force myself away from that because I know it's a better way to go than to be an order taker. And so it's not easy for me to go to networking events at all. Right. And I've been fortunate that my business is so much where I want it now that I've actually been able to significantly reduce the amount of networking events that I go to, and I've reduced it all the way down to one particular event that I still attend on a regular basis, and that's because it has an extremely niched target market for me of very affluent business owners. But I used to attend a lot of them, and I was never comfortable doing it. I didn't like it, but I went to a lot of trainings. I invested a lot of money. Over $10,000, in fact, for a variety of trainings that I went through to be a better networker and to understand how it works. And through all that training, I started to become more comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's what I really encourage. You have to, unless you want to continue to have the same results that you're having, if you want to change those results, this is just what golf instructors teach their golf students. The golf student complains, well, that grip doesn't feel comfortable. Well, of course it doesn't feel comfortable. You've been gripping it like a snake for how long, and now you are saying that you want to change your swing, you want better results, but it's going to feel uncomfortable for a little while. And that's the same thing with networking and doing different marketing strategies. There are some things that are going to piss you off, if you will, for a little while, because they're not going to make you comfortable. And as a business coach, if my golf instructors are not getting mad at me once in a while because I'm making them uncomfortable, then I'm not doing a very good job, because otherwise nothing's going to change.
Yeah, exactly. If you fall in, whether somebody that's taking lessons or what have you, if they're falling into the same patterns all the time, they're not going to yield the results that they're looking for. Scott, I see here that you had published a book entitled Highest Paid Golf Instructor, and essentially what the premise of the book is basically walks instructors through a step, if you will, or several steps in lead generation, and then also converting into clients through that process. How is that? Obviously, we've talked about how that's different than what traditionally golf instruction has been in the past. Where can somebody get a copy of that book? And what would you suggest? Would that be a good read for somebody that maybe isn't at the level that you are right now? Is that a good starting point to maybe get a little bit background on the process that's involved?
It's a very valuable tool in implementing that process. It's not theory. It walks them through how they would actually do it, step by step. So by the time they've gone through that book, they can actually start to implement it the very next day. And I actually give that book away to participants in the mastermind group, or they can order it directly by contacting me by email, scott@usagolfmarketing.com. And that book really really shifts you from being an order taker to understanding how to create a lead and then process that lead into a potential client, and then it walks you through the process of turning that client into a sale without actually being a salesperson, because everybody in the golf industry says, well, I don't want to sell anything, I don't want to be a salesperson or anything like that. And that's what's cool about this, is that you don't have to be.
Right.
You don't have to be a salesperson at all. And so instead of wandering around having random conversations with potential customers that happen to be walking through the doors at your golf course, or maybe happen to be hitting balls at the range, this book actually gives you a system to put in place that takes that potential customer from a lead to a prospect to an actual client. It really solves that problem, and it takes you from a passive order taker to a proactive business developer who grows the game. And that's a big part of it. When we talk about growing the game, well, you can't grow the game as an order taker. You have to be proactive, and you cannot be passive. But at the same time, you don't have to be a greasy car salesman and constantly saying, well, you should take golf lessons from me because I'm great. Look at me. Look at how I hit the ball. I'm awesome. You should take lessons from me. It doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to be that greasy car salesman. There's actually what I coach in this book is a process, the 4-step client conversion process, coaches them on how to have the prospect actually buy from you versus you selling them anything. And that's a lot of fun. I enjoy that, especially for me, because I'm not a salesperson, and I don't want to be a greasy car salesperson. It's uncomfortable for me to go out there and be all salesy. So I've enjoyed implementing this system. And I've learned this system from a variety of business coaches out there, from Andrew Wood of Legendary Marketing to Dan Kennedy of Glazer Kennedy Insider Circle, to a local expert, Sean Miller and Tony Rubleski in Michigan, to national experts like Frank Kern and Jay Abraham. So it's a lot of good information that I've compiled together and put into this book.
Fantastic. Scott, just in closing, we just got a few minutes here. I want to give you an opportunity to let the people know if they're interested in pursuing and finding and gathering more information about what we're talking about here tonight, how they can go about do that. And then I have one final thing that I want to talk to you about before I let you go. So just let everybody know where they can go to get this information if they want to participate in the process, if they want to make changes in what their setup is now and becoming an independent golf instructor, how they go about doing that through some of the tools that you're able to provide them.
Sure. The mastermind group info is all at usagolfmarketing.com, usagolfmarketing.com, and I believe there's a contact us page on there where they can contact me directly about any other inquiries. But if not, the email is very simple. It's scott@usagolfmarketing.com.
Perfect. Fantastic. Scott, what I wanted to say to you, and my wheels have sort of been turning as we've been talking here. This was really I think a great opportunity for you to, and I know you've done through other avenues as well, but really to sort of get what you're talking about here out to some of the golf instructors here. But I'd like to expand a little bit further, and you and I can talk about this at a later point. But I'd like to actually bring some of this topic and this conversation into one of the Coach's Corner segments and create some dialogue. And I'd like to invite a group of some of the teachers and instructors out there, maybe sort of split it up 50-50, a couple that maybe are currently involved in this and maybe some that are not, and just have some dialogue and some conversation going in that group format. And then what we'll do is we'll sort of branch it out through some of the different social media and really give this a big push, because I think this is a fantastic thing that what you're doing. And I know that there's already a number that are involved in it. I know that you're doing a lot to spread the word, but I'm more than happy to provide more time in helping you further this, because this is really, as you said, this is how we're going to grow the game.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it would be, and it's not, obviously we want to help the individuals out there and becoming better golfers and that, but it's also about really making changes within the industry and helping those in the industry that maybe either have been struggling or are looking to make some changes and being able to grow their businesses, because that's really what it's all about. Is as our businesses grow, we're going to be able to help more and more people, and we need to exchange and share this information within our community, if you will, of golf instructors and coaches and so forth. So I'm certainly willing to provide more time for this discussion, but in the meantime, Scott, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing and sort of getting the ball rolling here on Golf Talk Live.
Absolutely, I enjoyed it, and I hope your audience benefits, and we'll continue to grow the game.
Fantastic. And for those of you that, again, Scott, if you want to just very quickly just let especially the instructors, but anybody really that wants to get in touch with you and learn more about that, how they can go about reaching out to you.
Sure. The website is usagolfmarketing.com, and the email is scott@usagolfmarketing.com.
Perfect. And I strongly suggest, and I know many of you will, but for those tuning in tonight to the broadcast, a great opportunity here, guys, to really make some changes with your businesses. Again, Scott, thank you very much for joining me on Golf Talk Live. Always a pleasure, and I look forward to having you back.
Awesome. Have a great night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Scott. Bye-bye. Okay, that was my special guest, Scott Seifferlein, from really what I look at as a great opportunity for golf instructors and golf teach professionals out there. And I strongly suggest that you engage with him if you haven't already, and spread the word. And I'm going to make an effort here to have Scott come back on, and we'll get some further conversation, dialogue, and get a few others to join in the panel discussion. But in the meantime, I see we're slowly running out of time here, or rather quickly running out of time. So I want to thank the listeners for tuning into the broadcast tonight. And I will endeavor to bring more interesting conversation and discussions to Golf Talk Live each and every week. And I want to thank you for doing the one thing that really helps, and that is to continue to tune into the broadcast each and every week. And I also thank you to my special guests, John Hughes, PGA Master Professional down in the Orlando area. Thank you for having that special Coach's Corner segment with me tonight. And again, thank you for Scott Seifferlein for coming in and sharing the business golfer mastermind group information. And I hope that you'll continue to do that, Scott. Thank you. And also to many of the sponsors and supporters of the program, Jonathan Laird from SouthCoastGolfGuide.com, Meredith Kurt from Meredith Kurt Golf, and also Nikki and Tiffany Litherland. Thank you for spreading the word and helping to grow the show. Mr. Bernie Pinder, founder of, and Mr. Sean Kelly, owner of LinkedGolfers.com, and of course my good friend from overseas in Ireland, Peter Doyle from Doyle Golf Solutions. Thank you very much for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live. I look forward to seeing you here and having you join in maybe in the conversation next week here on Golf Talk Live, next Thursday at 6 p.m. Central, right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody. Have a great weekend.